I'm Jishan Singh, Assistant Professor in IT Department of LG Institute of Engineering and Technology. So this is our second part of our third operation in MongoDB with the help of our Express.js model. So in the first video, I will explain the basics. How can we create our overall view? Okay, so let's move to our practical portion. Okay, so I think in the previous video, if you see that our third demo module is there, in that we are creating three different portion: model, view and controller. Okay, our basic application, the main application is app.js. Okay, then we are creating one root, and also we are creating one view portion that creates a schema of our MongoDB in the JSON format. Okay, so already we know our basic application is working, it is connected. Okay, so let's test again. Okay, node known. Okay, and app.js. Okay, my node known is started. Yes, server is connected, my app.js. Okay, I'm testing in my Postman. Okay, you can see in the get method users. Okay, sending request. Okay, get method from the user.js. Okay, but here I'm not getting, I don't want to this data, because we are doing the practical session for CRUD operation. I want to insert the data, I want to update the data, I want to delete the data. Okay, how can we do that? Okay, so let's move to the updation portion. Okay, so first we are knowing that all the data formats what we are using, it is in the JSON portion. Okay, so in the you can see we have two attributes in the database, name and surname. So what are the operation I am performing here on only two attributes, name and surname. Okay, so let's move to the coding portion. Okay, so here I'm blocking the basic syntax of router.get here. Okay, okay, now I assume here whatever the structure is till now you are clear about that. We are going to our first REST API, that is our GET. Okay, so I'm unblocking this. So before going to this, okay, we have to understand what are these REST API. Okay, so when we are talking about this REST API, asynchronously in Node.js, it will perform your task. So how it will be, if you want to perform anything, okay, asynchronously, for that you have to use async, you have to create your function as a async, and your particular parameter have to wait for this particular deadlock connection. Okay, so for that await is used. Okay, the detailing, the in the detail what is the async, what is the await, you can move to this our previous video. Okay, I already explained that. So here I'm creating one get method. Okay, so get method is used for finding the data. Okay, get method is generally what happens when user is requesting, server is give the response. Okay, so get method is used here. So here we are just using the async request response. So if this is the similar to this, okay, function, but what happen if I'm not want to give any name here. Okay, so we can directly use request response, and we have to use this symbol of array. Okay, so both are similar. You can write like this function request response, or you can write like this request response and particular bracket. I can also make this function as a async, like a s y, and this is a simple method to declare as a any function as a async. Okay, so here we are just declaring this function as a async. Now we are using the try catch block because we are performing the database task, so there will be a possibility for pretending any type of exception. So catch block is all about if any error is occurring, we are sending to this particular console. Here we are going to our particular response dot send error is there. Okay, so here in the try block we are putting our particular code. So if we are calling the get method, server is giving all the response what we are inserted in. Okay, suppose if we are not entering any data, so what happens, it will reply the blank JSON. Okay, in the JSON format, the null data is sent in the bracket. Okay, so till now we have some data in our database. Okay, that's why it will send. If you are performing the first time directly get method, it is not generated any data. Instead of that, it is just sending the data with the bracket. Okay, so here our all the data are following the structure of your particular view that is available in the model, and we are fetched in which variable, that is our user. So if I want to fetch the data, then I can use user.find method. Okay, this is a very simple code, user.find, and I have to use await here. Okay, and that will be stored in one database, one variable, that is my user. And then again we have to send those data in our console, but it will be in the JSON format. That's why we have to use response.json. In the parameter we have to pass the user. You have to understand both this line here. We are using the find method. Okay, that find method is fetching the data from which users. So what is user here? Is the user is we are importing from our models user, and what is that? That is generated our schema. You can see that is the schema that will having the attribute name and surname. Okay, so here only simply we have to write the user.find, that is performing our task. And after getting the data, we have to show that data. That's why we have to send response.json, because all the data are in the schema in the JSON format. So we have to convert into the JSON format, JSON and user. So this is the simple using that we can fetch the data. Okay, so let's check our method from Postgres. Okay, user, that is available get method. We are calling the get method. Okay, and I'm send. Okay, users. Okay, sorry, we have to save. Sending. Okay, you can see here we are getting the data. Okay, so in the JSON format you can see that is the bracket. Okay, in the bracket whatever the data I am inserted, that is already available. Okay, that's why it is showing. So starting bracket is started, bracket is ended, in between you can see whole data is generated. So here if you are seeing that in our model portion in the user, we are already entered only name and surname, two property. Okay, now you can see we are not entering any ID here. Okay, but our postman is telling that ID is this, and this is unique ID. Okay, you can see this is automatically system generated ID. Okay, and this is the version of that. So name and surname is telling what the data I am inserted. Okay, and the ID is uniquely generated. So in IDBS what happened, you are writing like this ID. If you have to provide ID as a primary key, then you have to require, then you have to give the primary key, so it is not repeated. Okay, the values, it is compulsory format. It is not all things here in the JSON. Your ID is automatically generated. Okay, so whatever the data you are performing here, you have to remember that. So this is the all about the basic our get method. So you have to remember, okay, request response user.find, and you have to perform the listen. Okay, but one thing is also that you have to write this thing. Okay, app.use express.json file. If you are not writing this, then you are not getting the answer. Okay, because our Express.js web module is following the JSON format here. Okay, that's why we have to use one middleware. Okay, you know what is the middleware. During the router we are also using one middleware. So here all the data items which are switch over the web, that follows the JSON format here, not the text format. That's why our Express module have to use JSON. So we have to use app.use express.json. So this is the only line we are remembering in the explanation of our basic app.js. So now you are all aware about all the lines of your app.js. Now we are moving to the next portion, that is my fetch, you can see get method with id. Okay, so now I want this. For example, I want to get the data. When you are passing the dot slash users, it shows all the data. But I want the data item of the specific person from my database. So here I am copying my particular ID. I am paste. Okay, and I am fetching. Okay, it is showing the error because you can see in the parameter there is some change. Okay, here we have only roots till user. Okay, after that we are passing id, but we are not defining till now in my program. So the task is that if we want to fetch the data from the user, how can we get? So you are already about that. We have to use with the help of parameters. Okay, so here I'm blocking this code of id. Okay, so here what happened, I'm passing colon id. So what is telling exactly, it is all about the id what are we are passing after this slash. Okay, the particular root is my user root. Okay, after user, what which id we are passing, according to that we are finding the data instead of all the user list. So what is the minor change here? If we are simply call the our root, okay, user root, then we are getting the all the data. For that we are using the find method, but here we are getting the data of specific user, the id which we are passing for that particular user. So for that we are using the method find by id. Okay, and that id is dynamic. Okay, not a static. So for example, right now I am pasting the id that is x, then I am pasting again that is y, so that's why it is dynamic. So how can we get this data? Okay, for give the dynamic data we have to, we know that request dot params dot id, we are using here id, that's why. Okay, so instead of simple find method, we are change only here users dot find by id. Okay, in the parameter request dot params dot id. So whatever the id user is passing, okay, then it is find by this particular function and it is send it to this particular variable, and next it is send it to our JSON format and our data will be displayed. Okay, so I'm unblocking. Okay, just to save again. You can see, yes, server is connected. Okay, you can go here. Okay, before that you can see error is generated in our previous question. Okay, I'm just getting here first users. Okay, all two users are available. Instead of that, I'm just copying this. I want this data. Okay, so I'm passing here. I'm send the request. Okay, you can see now it is sended only the data of the user which match only this ID. Okay, so this is the concept. How can we get the data of this specific ID? Now we are talking about to send the data. Okay, here till now using the get method we are just getting the data from the server which is already installed. Now what happened, I want to send some data. Okay, how can we do that? Okay, so we are about that. For that we are using which method? That is our post method. Okay, so if you are sending the data using the post method, okay, we have to send some data items. Okay, so here in the body portion you have to write this data. Okay, for example, if I want to send name here something, for example name is here hello. Okay, that is my first. Okay, and my surname portion is, okay, surname colon, I'm writing the data that is for example ABC. Okay, what happened, I'm writing name and surname two variables. Here we have to put comma. Okay, that's why the error is removed. So in the body portion, okay, here is a row, yes, and we are passing this value whenever user is sending the data, okay, to this particular server, at that time we have to define that dynamic data we want to send. Okay, so what this particular updation is generated. Okay, so for that we have to use post method. Okay, till now we are not performing the task. Okay, so what happened exactly, just before going to, you have to remember that by default here it is a text format. Okay, so you have to go in the arrow and check the JSON. Okay, otherwise your data is not get here. Okay, so if I am sending. Okay, it's a generated error because here we are not calling the post method till now in our REST API. Okay, so let's move here. Okay, what is the code for the same? Okay, so I am unblocking the code and I am explaining. So what the task we are performing? Okay, so the task is that we are getting the data here first. Okay, we are getting the data and we are entering. So two tasks is here. Okay, we have to take the data and we have to send the data and we have to save the data. So basically this loop we have to complete here. Okay, so let's understand the code for the same. So here you can see we are created one user here. Okay, for that we are just writing router.post. Okay, this is our post REST API, async request response. Okay, this is our callback function. Here we are created new user here because we are adding a new user value to the our database. Okay, so in the parameter we are creating two attributes, name and surname attributes, that will be a match with our database. Okay, the sum attribute will be here. So what the data I am getting here, that data must be taken from here. Okay, so if you want to get the data, we have to write request dot body dot name. Okay, which attribute we are finding, which attribute I am passing here? Name attribute. Second attribute is surname attribute. Okay, so for that request dot body dot name. Okay, request dot body dot surname. Okay, so till now in this line what we are performing, we are trying to fetch the data from our particular postman. Okay, that when we are calling the post method here, at that time it will take the data from these two variables. Okay, this is the task of these lines. Okay, for getting the data from this particular console of your postman, you are writing request.body.name. Okay, for the second variable request.body.surname. Okay, and both is stored in this particular variable. Now next task, we have to save this data. Yes, you have to save this data in our database. Okay, for that we are writing our try catch block. Okay, so here we have to use which method? Save method is used here. Okay, so for getting the data from the user, okay, we are using find method for id, find id method, but for we are sending the data. Okay, at that time we have to save the data in our database. For that we are using which method? Save method. What we have to save? We have to save our data, which is name and surname, which is will be stored in which variable? User variable. Okay, that's why we have to write user dot save. And again we are storing this data in the format of JSON. Okay, that's why we are setting that A1 will send the variable response.json A1 and console.log data save. Okay, so this is only printing when in console when we are performing this task, and if any error is occurring, then catch block will handle this response.send error. Okay, let's run the code. Okay, our connection is successfully established. Okay, go to the postman. Name and surname is yes, and you can see the body portion. Yes, you can see here we are getting the data hello ABC. Okay, so in the response we are getting here. You can't see post method output in our browser, but in postman you can see. So let's check our old data is coming or not. Okay, I'm calling dot and sending. Yes, already data items are available. Okay, yes, you can see here hello ABC is inserted. if I want to add some other data item, for example, hi, and some name is XYZ, okay, I am calling post, you send, you can see it is generated, and using that the same URL you can see the list of all the available data item. Okay, you can see it is inserted at the last. So this is the post method, or you can see the post API, how it works in our Node.js. Now we are moving to the search method. If you want to search, if you want, sorry, update method. If you want to update something in our database, okay, how can we go through that? So for that we are using here patch method. So I already told what is the difference between put and patch. Okay, so here we are using the patch method. So if you are aware about the get method, then it is easy to understand what happened if I want to update something. Okay, for example, I'm going here. Suppose my name is hello, okay, and surname is ABC. I want to update something. Suppose I'm getting this ID, okay, and I'm telling that please change the name. Okay, so what is the first task? I have to identify that data item first using ID, then I will change that. Okay, so it is very easy to understand if you already aware about the task of get and post. Okay, so let's move here. Okay, so for patch, what the task is performing here by here, first I am getting the data, getting the ID from the user, okay, for which user I want to update something. So using request.param ID, I am getting the user here. Okay, now what the task is performed here. Okay, task is that, for example, for this data item, okay, I am taking this user ID and putting here, and the data is hi and xyz. Okay, for this user ID. Okay, now what I want here, I want to update the name. Instead of hi, I required how are you. Okay, this is the simple task I want to update. I am telling that for this user ID I want to change the name from hi to how are you. Okay, so what the task is performed, first I am getting this ID. Okay, so it is a similar to get. Okay, in get we are getting this find by ID. Now second, I want to update the name. Okay, so for that we have to enter new one, so we are entering here. So using the method of post, I am getting this. Okay, using request.body.name, and I am storing here user.name. Okay, now what happened here, I want to update using the save function that we are performing in our post. You can see here, okay, in user.save is there. Okay, so we are using here uh, body.name is equal to body.name, and again we have to use user.save. Okay, and last we have to save into the JSON format. So here response.json event. So this is the simple task using that we can update this particular user value. Okay, let's run the code here. Instead of hi, okay, hi, I want how are you. Okay, so I'm writing how are you. Okay, ID is generated already passed. Patch method you have to select, then send. Okay, you can see here we are updated with the value how are you. You can also check in the get. Okay, when you are fetching the same ID, you are getting the value. I'm getting the all the lists. In that you can see how are you with this particular ID. So this is the code of our fetch method. Simply you have to get first ID, then you have to take the value from this particular variable. We have to pass user.name. If you want to update the surname also, then you have to write user.surname request.body.surname. Whatever the data you have to update, you have to write here. Now we are moving to our last method, that is our delete method. Okay, so the delete method, in this we are performing the task specific, that is I am want to delete some specific data item. Okay, so for that we have to check first user ID, for which, for I want to delete which user. Okay, so that's why we have to first find by id request dot rm dot id. Okay, and using the id we are getting this, and simply we have to use user dot delete function. Okay, using this you can delete any user id from our database. In the last we are adding a response.json file. So let's move to the postman. Okay, we have number of data item. Suppose I want to delete this hello and abc. I'm copying id, just copy. Okay, I'm passing this. Okay, suppose I'm getting first, I'm get yes. Now I'm moving to the delete portion. Okay, so delete with this specific id. I'm going send. Okay, just telling that specific you are not. Oh, what is that error is that? Okay, I have to save this first. Okay, now because if you are not saving this, then delete function is not getted here. Okay, now you can see it is deleted. Okay, now for 80 id, just remember 80. Okay, you can see here 80 id null. Okay, you see this specific id is not generated because already we are deleting this, that's why it is returning null. So instead of that, if I am finding all the users, you are not finding the user id with 80, you can see 81 is here available. Okay, so this is the function of your delete method. Okay, for that you have to just first find the id. Okay, then you have to find the delete function here and response.json. So this is the basics of our CRUD operation. So when you want to perform the CRUD operation, you have to remember three things. We have to follow which structure? MVC architecture. Okay, first is our app.js file. In that we have to import our basic Express and Mongoose file. Okay, first we are connecting our Mongoose. Okay, mongoose.connect URL, what the data we are passing here. Okay, this is the optional portion. If we are not want some warning, then we have to specify. Then we have to create the connection using mongoose.connection. Then we have to open the file using one function, and we have to last app.listen. Then next we are generating one view here. Okay, so user.js is available. Okay, in the view we are creating one JSON format for our mongoose. We are importing first mongoose, then mongoose.schema. Here we are declaring two variable name and surname, type and required format is passed. If we want to import this package into another, then we have to use import.export exports, and we have to use specific model function of mongoose because we are importing whole schema. Okay, so schema name, that is our user schema, and the variable name is user. Now last we are doing the routes here, that's why we are created users. Okay, so here we have to first use import our express, then routes. Here we are using the particular schema, that's why we are creating require model users. Okay, then we are understanding whole HTTP APIs which are used, RESTful APIs which are used for get, post, put, post, patch and delete function. Okay, if you want to see your particular data item, okay, which are available with MongoDB, so I'm just copying my path here. Okay, and I'm opening my compass. Okay, and I'm passing my URL. Okay, I'm delete. Okay, cancel. What is done? That command. Okay, cannot modify. Okay, what? Okay, here I go. I want to connect to again. It will take some time for initialization. Okay, After that, it will give some space. There you have to specify the URL you want to see that. Okay, so you have to use Postman again. Okay, for that you have to install the Postman for defining the get, post, put also available for updating, patch and delete. Okay, so let's check it is available or not. Okay, okay, confirm what is coming there. Okay, I'm writing connection string here, MongoDB, who promise and invalid schema. Sorry, we can't. Okay, so looking it very limited. We can't like this. Const URL is not used. Okay, MongoDB localhost MyDB. Okay, so you are getting the whole database what we are correctly created. Yes, the default available admin config local and MyDB what we are created during the project. Okay, so it is available. The user, yes, collection, you can see it is a collection name. Documents is available what the data we are inserted. You can see all data I have here. ID, name, surname. It is not like RDBMS table structure. It is a collection. Okay, on a whole data are known as your documents here. Okay, so all the data item you can also GUI base you can update the date, but we are not performing it here. Okay, we are just going to our console for all the operation for create, update, delete, okay, and insert. So this is all about our cloud operation portion 2. So I hope you enjoy this session. Thank you for watching.